It was a big day for Utah as state leaders make a huge investment in an unproven drug to treat COVID-19.
What the state did was purchase a large quantity of these drugs so that if there are providers in Utah who want to treat their patients who have COVID-19 with hydroxychloroquine, they have the capacity to do so. So these drugs will be distributed through pharmacies, no charge to the patients, and if a prescriber does want to prescribe it to their patient, they're able to do so.
Yeah, but some Utah lawmakers don't see eye to eye with state epidemiologist Angela Dunn, saying the malaria drug could do more harm than good.
Jim Spiewak talked to a representative who's also a physician tonight. Jim?
Yeah, Representative Suzanne Harrison told me that Utah taxpayers could be on the hook for this drug that we don't even know is effective yet. The state will soon be the owner of 200,000 units of hydroxychloroquine. It's thought by some to be a potential drug to help COVID-19 patients.
When we don't have the medical science to back it up, I feel like it's irresponsible to be using taxpayer dollars for something that we don't know if it works.
The FDA said this drug should be used in the context of a clinical trial right now. Representative Suzanne Harrison is also an anesthesiologist. She says a number of recent studies show the drug could be potentially harmful.
This is too important to get wrong, and patient lives are at risk.
The health department says the medication will be given to local pharmacies across the state, free to patients with a prescription certifying they have an active case of COVID-19. But Harrison says there's already plenty of supply and access. What would be the purpose of getting 200,000 units of this right now?
Great question, Jim. I have the same question, and it's a concern.
Harrison says there have been warnings from infectious disease doctors and epidemiologists.
Those people are crying out and asking for the state to not participate in these types of contractual arrangements because it's not needed.
Now, a spokesperson with the Utah Department of Health says that the contract is not entirely finalized just yet. So when we asked about the total cost of this contract, they said they'll release that information only once the contract is final. So still some questions to be answered here. Guys, back to you.
First, Brian Malahy, live at the Capitol for us tonight as issues surrounding the virus emphasize the need for a special session. And Brian, there are some concerns over the state buying some large amounts of the drug chloroquine. Is that right?
Well, that is right. A state lawmaker who is also a doctor says she is outraged that the state spent $800,000 apparently to buy hydroxychloroquine and chloroquine to gear up for coronavirus.
There is no shortage of hydroxychloroquine in the state of Utah. Patients and physicians already have access to use it or prescribe it.
Representative Suzanne Harrison says the verdict is still out on whether the drugs work against the sometimes dangerous and deadly coronavirus.
There's really no need for the government and the state of Utah to be using taxpayer dollars to purchase an unproven medication.
A signed state purchase order shows 20,000 doses of chloroquine and hydroxychloroquine bought at a cost of $800,000. The Utah Department of Health says it's had preliminary negotiations to buy 200,000 hydroxychloroquine treatments, but that no contract has been signed. The PO and the negotiations appear to be two different transactions.
If someone thinks that hydroxychloroquine or another drug would help them and their doctor agrees, shouldn't they be able to use it?
Absolutely, and that's already possible through normal channels.
The $800,000 apparently is coming from federal stimulus funds, according to Representative Harrison. More than 100 worldwide trials are underway on the drugs. That's what's been reported. At least one clinical trial underway here in Utah. Brian Malahy at the Capitol.
There are new details just coming to light about an anti-malaria drug for potential treatment of COVID-19 our state bought 24 days ago.
Yeah, we have team coverage for you here in Utah and in the nation's capital as well.
It is a deal that was never open to the public, but you are funding it. Jim Spiewak found out the deal was for about $800,000. Jim?
Yeah, I got a copy of the contract. It's right here, and what the governor's office and state is calling a rapid fire decision for 20,000 units of hydroxychloroquine, which the state also told me earlier tonight they have not taken delivery of yet. Behind closed doors, with the public not knowing who has a seat at the table, decisions are being made and taxpayer money is being spent.
We should be making responsible decisions and being transparent with those decisions as well.
This purchase order shows on March 31st, the state of Utah bought $800,000 worth of hydroxychloroquine. The public is just now finding out about it, and I took it to Chase Thomas, who runs the watchdog group Better Utah.
This is still a little concerning that the government went ahead and made a huge purchase like this without anybody really knowing.
It was also recently discovered the Utah Health Department is negotiating for 200,000 units of the same drug from the same company. That deal has not been signed yet, but this is a different deal entirely.
I think for Utahns, it just shows that we need to hold our government officials accountable and make sure that they're doing what's right for our state.
The governor's office denied an interview request about this purchase tonight, but Paul Edwards, a COVID community task force spokesperson, sent me a statement instead saying in part, in the early days of the crisis, the governor's office of management and budget was authorized to make rapid fire decisions about strategic purchases in support of the state's response. And earlier today, during the special session, lawmakers blocked an amendment that would have put a cap on how much the state can spend on non-FDA approved drugs, which now paves the way for the state to spend up to $6 million on drugs just like this one. Now, the statement that I received from the COVID task force, I've put it on our website in its entirety over at KUTV.com. Guys, back to you.
Jim, thank you. A government-funded analysis found that drug still required patients to need ventilators, and patients on this drug had a higher death rate than those who were not using it. This one study was done on 368 patients at veterans medical centers across the country. The research was funded by the National Institutes of Health and also the University of Virginia. Other studies ongoing.
But the big issue today, state leaders have purchased a large amount of a controversial drug. Jim Spiewak and Brian Malahy both looking into this for us. First, Brian, Governor Herbert hopes that Utah can get a refund for this purchase of 20,000 doses of hydroxychloroquine, and now we're hearing there's an investigation as well, right?
Yeah, and these investigators are lawyers from the Attorney General's office. Their charge, according to the governor, find out what happened, how it happened, why it happened. The governor says he was not personally involved with the decision.
But did you have any personal information prior to that purchase about the buy, and did you act on it? And then a second question, I have it on good authority that you were told in a letter from respected infectious disease physicians that it was a bad idea to purchase the drug. Is that true?
You know, I know on the first one, and I can't recall the second one, so I don't know. I'd have to check with my chief of staff, see if there's some correspondence that came in that I don't recall. I can tell you we always knew, I think from the beginning, that it was not without controversy from the standpoint of we had people that thought it was a miracle drug that was going to help people. Not that it was going to be a cure, but that it had hope that it would lessen the severity and the length of time that a person that had COVID-19 would have to suffer.
State Representative Ray Ward, who is also a doctor and opposes stockpiling hydroxychloroquine, says new FDA recommendations that the drug should only be used in hospitals and clinical trials does not prohibit docs from prescribing hydroxychloroquine to patients for coronavirus. We were told that infectious disease docs sent a letter to the governor expressing their opposition to this purchase, but if that letter exists, it has not been produced, and we've been trying to get it. So far, nobody's been able to show it to us. The governor, as you heard, suggested that he hasn't seen it. Brian Malahy at the Capitol.
Thanks, Brian. Jim Spiewak in the newsroom for us now. A little more context on all this. And Jim, the issue's been up and down all week now.
Yeah, it really has. So let's go ahead and take a look at the timeline of this whole issue. On Tuesday of this week, we confirmed with the state health department that they said they were purchasing 200,000 units of hydroxychloroquine from a company called Meds in Motion, and that contract was still in the process of being negotiated. Then on Wednesday, the governor was asked about the potential of stockpiling this drug, and here's what he had to say. Take a listen.
When it comes to the COVID-19. That being said, we need to make sure we have a stockpile of that drug for malaria and lupus. And the concern is if people use it for other reasons, off-label uses, that there won't be enough for those who really need to use it for these other things that it was prescribed for originally.
The very next day, we found out there was already a purchase made by the state for 20,000 units that was made back on March 31st. The public paid for that purchase. They did not know about it until yesterday. And then today, both the governor and lieutenant governor said they did not know about the purchase that was done through the budget office. And then in just the last hour, the lieutenant governor responded saying he was not aware of the purchase. In the early days of the COVID-19 crisis, the governor's Office of Management and Budget was authorized to make rapid-fire decisions about strategic purchases in support of the state's response to the pandemic. All such purchases, such as those for personal protective equipment, were acquired in anticipation that federal funding would eventually follow. So there's the bit of the timeline right there. We still have a lot of questions as to exactly how this purchase went through, why it went through, and we'll continue to try to get answers, Mark.
First tonight, new developments in this controversy surrounding hydroxychloroquine.
The Utah Attorney General's office is now reviewing the state's purchase of $800,000 worth of this drug, but who approved the purchase, and is it really a waste of your taxpayer dollars?
It's on the government side of the equation, it was all done in good faith with the desire to help the public. I can't answer for the other side of the equation right now.
The governor saying today that this purchase of the drug was a way to try to solve a unique problem. State officials say the 20,000 doses of the drug have not yet been delivered to the state. They're hopeful that the state might be able to cancel the order and get a refund of that money.
The state bought the drugs from Meds in Motion, and now the state is looking into how they got into business with this specific company.
Yeah, Jim Spiewak with the two top office holders saying today they didn't know about this particular purchase.
Yeah, so as this started to come to light, Lieutenant Governor Spencer Cox said that he wasn't available for an interview. Obviously, as the head of the COVID-19 task force, we had some very specific questions, but through a statement, he says he did not know about this purchase, going on to say he doesn't know every contract that the state executes.
One of the things that's come up here in the last really 24 hours, and that has to do with our hydroxychloroquine.
$800,000 worth the state bought 25 days ago that the public is just now finding out about. Governor Gary Herbert says he's just finding out about that buy, too.
But we had pros and cons happening, unbeknownst to me, that we actually had, of course, we had this emergency authorization that we have with our health department for these kinds of situations.
The purchase was made through the budget office.
We had people certainly pushing it, and people thought there was some hope there.
The governor says he's not sure how or why the state ended up using the pharmacy they did, Meds in Motion.
Just a little reluctant to say how we got involved, because I don't know for sure, although I've heard different stories. And so why don't you just hang on for next week and we'll be able to maybe clarify some of those things.
A month ago, the state did an inventory of hydroxychloroquine. Multiple pharmacists told me today there's been ample supply. The governor says there was concern supply could run short.
So that seemed to be kind of hedge your bet kind of a thing. I'm not sure that that all was correct.
Now, throughout the day, I've seen copies of multiple discussions by infectious disease experts concerned about this specific drug. This while at the exact same time the state was purchasing a large quantity of it, we now know, for $800,000. Guys.